The story begins with a recap of the events of the Two Towers, reminding the reader of the Fellowship's division, Frodo and Sam's perilous journey towards Mordor, guided by Gollum, and the battles raging in Rohan, and the hidden heir Aragorn beginning to reveal himself to the world. The narrative then shifts to Gondor, where Gandalf arrives in Minas Tirith with Pippin on the eve of a great war. Gandalf warns Denethor, the steward of Gondor, about the impending attack and the need for Rohan's aid. But Denethor, a proud and skeptical leader, is more concerned with learning about the fate of his son, Boromir, who died in the service of Frodo. Pippin, now sworn to Denethor's service, recounts the events that led to Boromir's death, attempting to honor the fallen hero. As tensions rise in Minas Tirith, the beacons of Gondor are lit, signaling Rohan for aid. The situation grows dire, and the city prepares for a siege. Faramir, Denethor's other son, attempts to defend Osgiliath, but is forced to retreat after a heroic but desperate stand against the vastly superior forces of Mordor. Wounded and pursued by the Nazgul, Faramir is rescued by Gandalf and brought back to Minas Tirith. But the experience leaves him gravely ill, adding to Denethor's growing despair. Meanwhile, in Rohan, Theoden answers Gondor's call for aid and prepares his forces for war. Accompanied by Merry, he leads the Rohirrim towards Minas Tirith. Aragorn, however, takes a different path, choosing to follow the paths of the dead, a haunted road through the mountains, in order to summon an ancient oath-bound army to his aid. He is joined by Legolas and Gimli. As Mordor's forces lay siege to Minas Tirith, Gandalf assumes command of the city's defense in Denethor's declining mental state. The city endures a brutal assault, with orcish siege engines bombarding its walls and a dark cloud spreading over the land. Denethor, overwhelmed by despair and grief, attempts to burn himself and the comatose Faramir on a pyre, believing all hope is lost. Pippin alerts Gandalf, who manages to save Faramir from this horrific fate, but Denethor succeeds in killing himself, immolating himself upon the pyre. At dawn, the Rohirrim arrive, answering Gondor's call, their horns heralding a desperate charge into the enemy's ranks. The Battle of the Pelennor Fields rages, and Theoden leads his forces with great valor, but is ultimately slain by the Witch King of Angmar. Éowyn, disguised as a man and accompanied by Merry, confronts the Witch King and, with Merry's unwitting aid, manages to destroy him, fulfilling an ancient prophecy. Éowyn is gravely wounded in the battle, and Merry is also injured. Aragorn arrives with the Grey Company, the oath-bound army from the Paths of the Dead, and the corsairs of Umbar's captured fleet. The tide of the battle turns as the dead strike terror into Mordor's allies, and Aragorn leads the combined forces to victory. Despite the victory, Aragorn knows that the war is not yet won, and that Sauron's power must be challenged directly. As Éowyn and Faramir are brought to the Houses of Healing, they eventually find solace and love with each other. Aragorn, skilled in healing, tends to their wounds and helps them recover. A council is held to decide the next course of action. Gandalf argues that the only way to draw Sauron's attention away from Frodo and Sam, who are presumably somewhere in Mordor trying to destroy the ring, is to launch a bold offensive against the Black Gate. With a small army consisting of the remaining forces of Gondor and Rohan, Aragorn marches to the Morannon, the Black Gate of Mordor, and openly challenges Sauron. Meanwhile, Frodo and Sam, disguised as orcs, continue their arduous journey towards Mount Doom. Exhausted and burdened by the ring, they face constant threats and near starvation. Sam supports Frodo through his increasing weakness and the ring's corrupting influence. Gollum, still obsessed with the ring, continues to stalk them, a constant threat to their mission. As Aragorn and his forces engage in a desperate battle against overwhelming numbers outside the Black Gate, Frodo and Sam finally reach the crack of doom. However, at the last moment, Frodo is unable to resist the ring's power and claims it for himself, putting it on his finger. Sauron, realizing that the ring is about to be destroyed, sends the Nazgul to intercept Frodo. But fate intervenes. Gollum, who has been stalking Frodo, attacks him and bites off Frodo's finger, taking the ring. In his ecstatic joy, Gollum loses his balance and falls into the fiery chasm, destroying the ring and himself. With the ring destroyed, Sauron's power is instantly undone. His armies collapse, and Barad-dûr, the Dark Tower, crumbles. The Nazgul are destroyed, and the black clouds over Mordor dissipate. Aragorn's forces, facing certain defeat, are miraculously saved, and they celebrate their victory on the field of Cormallen. The heroes are honored, and the wounded are healed. Aragorn is crowned King of Gondor, and a new age begins. The story concludes with the return of the hobbits to the Shire, where they find that it has been despoiled by Saruman and his ruffians. Merry and Pippin lead a rebellion, defeating the ruffians and restoring order to the Shire. Frodo, however, finds that he cannot fully heal from the wounds he has suffered, and that the Shire no longer feels like home. In the final chapter, Frodo, Bilbo, Gandalf, Elrond, and Galadriel, along with Sam, Merry, and Pippin, journey to the Grey Havens. Frodo and Bilbo, as ring-bearers, are granted passage to the Undying Lands to find peace. Sam returns to the Shire, where he marries Rosie Cotton and lives a long and happy life, becoming a respected member of his community. Ultimately, Aragorn, now old, lays himself down in death. Arwen then follows to Lorien, giving her life to death. The book concludes with Sam, now an old man, passing on the Red Book to his daughter Eleanor and riding west, implying his own eventual journey to the Grey Havens and the Undying Lands, where he hopes to reunite with his friends in the end of all things.